This is the No Stroke Podcast with your co-hosts David Dancero and Michael Garrow, helping you to support and thrive in life after stroke. Their podcast is designed for educational and community support purposes only and should not replace medical treatment and guidance of your own health professional team.
Welcome to episode 47 of the No Stroke Podcast. I'm Dave Dancero, and I'm here as always with my co-host Mike Garrow.
How are we doing, David? Good. Moving into March, the year's rolling. Weather's been warm, which is lovely, but we've kind of been on a roll here with guests. We had David Petruno a couple of weeks ago, Dr. AVM Mystery. If you look, I was taking a look back at our catalog, and we haven't had a great discussion with another survivor, caregiver for. I was looking back at the last one we did was in September with Orlina Sheik when we spoke about the Moya Moya. So really excited to dive into this one today. We got connected through I think you and I were both pretty surprised when we got a message off Mary Beth from International Pediatric Alliance. And she was like, "Hey, I saw your podcast come through on some awards for the American Stroke Association." You and I were like, "What?"
So, thanks for telling us.
But yeah, we were, and I could highlight again. That's coming. So we've come to find out, I was nominated for Voters' Choice Award for Stroke Hero Award through the American Stroke Association, but obviously that's an us award, right? You and I, what we're doing. They should have put the prettier face up there on the website, but yeah, so Mary B, she connected us into our guest today, Kyler, and his mother, Raylene Lewis. It was great chat, but it was just funny how that connection came, right? But goes to show, there's so many folks out there kind of on the same mission we are, and really excited for this one.
Yeah, and it just goes to show the more people we speak to, that ring just kind of keeps interconnecting, and it's just you guys are doing a great job. You got to speak to this person, and so we're kind of throwing those little rocks in the pond and creating that ripple, and it is a lot of work. We're meeting here on an afternoon after our day jobs, but and I did get some good feedback from someone just reached out and really complimented us on, and again, like you mentioned, we've been a little heavy on the tech side, on the rehab, and they mentioned that the episode that we did with David Petrino, I think all our episodes are great, but they really said from a developer side and someone in that space, they said it was the best dive that we've done into helping them really understand that process of innovation and carrying it through and getting the patient perspective. And so I'm still got to get them to write us a review. And for folks out there listening, that makes our day and our week when we hear that kind of, positive feedback. So keep that coming. But this was a great interview. And I guess maybe before we set the stage and maybe kind of we focus on our guest coming on, this was a little bit of a tough one for me, Mike. I'll be honest. Brought me back to a lot of the early advocacy in around pediatric stroke, helping other survivors in the community, and I hope we can do more of these in the future. And it is important to continue along the lines of spreading awareness about the technology and the, connecting, better care pathways for life after stroke. We definitely, it always, it in some ways it continues to warm my heart and keep that spark going, that we have to keep growing this community. So, but it was, it was a reflection of, helping other young survivors overcome some of the obstacles that you'll hear our guests talk about today.
Yeah. So, this is our first discussion with a survivor who, is a pediatric stroke survivor, right? Very different. And, again, I was saying Mary Beth, it's Mary Kay who made the introduction. So she heads up the International Alliance for Pediatric Stroke. She was awarded last year the Group Hero Award through the Strokes Heroes nomination, and Kyler Lewis was Pediatric Hero of the Year. Kyler was just 15 when he had a stroke, suffered what's called an AVM type of stroke. So it's a brain hemorrhage, right? And Raylene, like Kyler's mom, just when you hear her speak, it just goes to show kind of, and you've said it before, David, like, you mess with your child, like, you're going at all ends to figure it out and demand the treatment that you think it needs to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Get me the answers. If you don't have the answers, I'm going to find someone who can help me get those answers, and you'll hear the loud and clear from Raylene for sure. Yeah.
And, Kyler's doing, phenomenal work to really get the voice out of the risk factors and educate kids his age, like, hey, this is a thing, this could happen, right? It's a rare condition, but still, both children, parents, like, need to be aware of these risks and what it could cause. As we go into the discussion, you'll hear there is no cure for AVM, right? Mm-hmm. As they describe it as a ticking time bomb in Kyler's head. Yeah. It's scary. Yeah. It's scary.
And just the perspective they both have, 3 years later, Kyler's now 18, you'll hear them talk about which way this could have turned, and the way they are moving forward is doing what they can control. And Kyler, by the way, very, very mature, magic wand answer, and something spot on, which needs to happen in terms of raising awareness. So I think I just want to make sure, and you covered it, Mike, just to make sure that we do give thanks to Mary Kay, because without her reaching out to us, we wouldn't have been introduced to this dynamic mother and son team. And we hope to get Mary Kay and her daughter on in a future episode, perhaps. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I think Mary Kay's daughter's speech and language or occupational.
I think she's now an OT. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting conversation. And with her being she's still, I believe it's still a graduate OT. So I think she's still in training but we're going to get her on when her schedule permits around her, busy student schedule. So.
Totally. Well, yeah. I think this is, again, it was a learning curve for us. I took away so much out of this episode. But I think, out of anything, just have so much respect again for, Kyler and his maturity towards this.
Absolutely.
Keeping, knowing that he needs to be a voice for others. And, obviously really doing everything in her power on top of a day job, which many caregivers and survivors, right? If you're in advocacy for stroke, it's not paying the bills, right? But it's, what we have a passion, and, that's why we're all here. And that's why, this community is as strong, as it is. But, I think it goes to show, like, if we all rallied as one, like, what change we could make. Right. So, it was a great episode. Really excited.
Just make sure, Mike, that we let folks know this is definitely one to also tune in later on our YouTube, on our video side of things, because we had a third guest appear on part 2. That is when we come back from break, Sammy, the family dog, and also it does a wonderful role in terms of companion and service dog to the family. So we talk about that a little bit as well, and maybe we can explore that further on future episodes as well, because that's a big part of recovery too. So
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
Sammy.
cut you off, but
No,
Sammy,
no.
Sammy was spot on.
He was good man. And we're my fiance's mom, we're looking to try to get a service dog for her, right? It's a special type of thing that, that companionship,
Yep.
between, the two. So yeah, hopefully, I would love to dive into a specific episode around that. But yeah, let's get to it.
Okay.
Just a quick CTA, bit of a plug. We have the voting for, the award that is going to be an US award, David, but for the nomination again through as a stroke hero, we've been fortunate to be nominated under the Voters' Choice category. So starting March 8th through, I believe, the 22nd of this month, you could go on to stroke.org, search just Stroke Heroes, American Stroke Association Stroke Heroes, however, give that a search in Google. And yeah, please cast your vote.
Yeah, if you like what we're doing here, that's a great way to pay it for what we're doing, and it would be very much appreciated. So I guess without further delay, let's let our guests in and enjoy this episode. Okay, welcome to the No Stroke Podcast. How are you doing today?
We're doing really good.
Yeah, it's a bright and sunshiny day here in Texas, so life is good. It's in the 80s. We can deal with that.
Well, we're certainly we appreciate that you joining us today, and this is our first. We've covered many topics, but this is our first episode where we're diving into pediatric stroke. So, with that said, Kyler, would you for our listeners tell us a little bit more about your story?
Sure. So I had my stroke when I was 15. I was laying down at home, and I just had this terrible pain, probably the worst pain you could ever feel. And I just was going on and on, screaming, crying, kicking. I mean,
Yeah, you kicked some.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And then it went away. And I went to sleep because that was the only way I was gonna not feel the pain, was to go to sleep. And then I woke up, I was fine in the morning. And then when I hopped in the car, I was just like, I mean, the doctors described it as if I was on drugs.
Disassociative.
Yeah.
So we were riding in the car, and all of a sudden he turned to me and he said, "Hey, Mom, how did I get in the car?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, did I fall asleep? Did you put me in the car? I don't remember getting in the car." And I said, "No, we got in the car to, run some errands." And then he said, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to be sick. And I thought, geez, he was fine like 2 seconds ago. What's going on? And so I pulled over, and then we got back, and we were really close to the doctor's office. So I called the doctor, and we just went straight in. This was during COVID. So I'm thinking, okay, do we have COVID? Is this COVID? What is this? And when we got to the doctor's office, the doctor saw him right away and said, "Oh, your son has a severe migraine headache." And they gave him a shot, and they told me to take him home and put him to bed. And if I had done that, then he would not have woken up. So Kyler had a hemorrhagic stroke, which is, bleeding in the brain. So instead of taking him to the doctor, I left the doctor's office and drove, normal speed to the hospital.
Normal speed.
Yeah, which is about an hour and a half away. And when I got there, they said, "Hey, we want him to pee in a cup." And I'm like, "Okay, you know what? We'll do whatever you want us to do. Drugs is not our problem, but we'll pee in the cup." And I think that's common for a lot of stroke victims, is that people think that there's something wrong, that they've done something to cause this. And after I kept, just insisting, they finally did a CT. And that's when it was like little ants on a piece of candy. And that's when we knew that Kyler needed to have major surgery, because he was the blood was pooling in his brain, and it was causing pressure buildup. And so we were transported to the main hospital, and
Yeah.
you woke up
Yep. And I didn't remember anything that happened.
Can you, for our audience, can you, how old were you when that happened, Kyler?
15. I was
15.
15 years old.
So Kyler is 18 now. So it was 3 years ago.
Almost 4.
Okay. Because that's a really important piece that you Raylene, that you mentioned, that, you know, in my years of advocacy, I don't know how many times that I've heard parents recount that as well, that often those symptoms are sometimes excused. And with that age range and you know, in the teens, that sometimes it's thought of, it's maybe everything but a stroke. So can you talk a little bit more about, give folks a little bit more background about AVM and what it is?
Explain.
So an AVM is is short for arteriovenous malformation. So AVM is the abbreviation for that. It's basically a clump and tangle of abnormal blood vessels that are not supposed to be there. So some people say it's like a tumor, but it's really not a tumor.
It's a tumor. It's more like if you would think of, like, if you think of Christmas lights that are all in a big old wire, you know, and you're like, you're never going to get this untangled, right?
Yeah.
So AVMs, for the most part, it's when a gene during the first 8 weeks of development, of fetal development, screws up. Okay. And so you have really, really high flowing arteries that connect to very, very low flow veins without any capillary system. And eventually the high flow connecting to the low flow with no capillaries can no longer hold, and it erupts. It causes a tear, which is a rupture, which is a hemorrhagic stroke, blood bleeding directly into the brain. So with a brain AVM, you typically have no symptoms. There's 2 typical times in life when an AVM ruptures. So Kyler never had a headache a day in his life prior to his AVM rupture.
Headaches all the time.
Yeah, but that's different. So yeah, he had never had a headache before, nothing like that. The first symptom usually is a rupture. So the first time basically that you're at risk if you have an AVM is 17. The average age of rupture is 17. And Kyler was 15 when his AVM ruptured. Typically, I think it's because it's like that whole puberty thing, you know, and growing and growth spurts. I think all that plays a factor. Although we know friends now in our community who've had AVMs rupture at 4 and 5 and 6 years old. But then typically, like if you kind of survive that and you keep going on, the next average age of rupture is about 34 years old. Again, the same thing. So it can hit twice. They are not hereditary. There are genetic mutations that some people have, like called RASA1 or HHT, which are genetic factors that can cause AVMs. But typically for a brain AVM, it's just the brain. It's just it's not hereditary at all. It's just a gene screws up.
She knows more about this than I do. See, I didn't know any of that stuff.
I was gonna say, Raylene, you know, so you're talking like you've, you know, studied this for 7 years as a, you know, graduate and a, you know, postdoc degree, and you know, it just goes to show what happens when you have a lived experience with something as impactful as, you know, your son being diagnosed with an AVM and having this happen.
Yeah, she knows more about it than some of the doctors.
No, I don't think
that has heard. No, not the ones that do brain stuff.
Well,
but
true,
like
but the doctors,
the
that don't.
pediatricians, stuff like that. She went to like 16 different neurosurgeons, I think.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm well versed at this point, you know, we're 3 years into this journey. And an AVM has a grade in size, right? So they range in size from grade 1, which is like a little bitty thing, right, up to a grade 6, which is massive. And when Kyler had his stroke and we went in and we ended up doing the MRI and a CTA and an angiogram and figuring out exactly what we were dealing with, we were told Kyler's AVM is a grade 4. Okay. And we had other doctors that tell us it's a 5. So Kyler's AVM is between a 4 and a 5. So what does that mean? Well, that means that his AVM started out the size of a chicken's egg. So if you can imagine a chicken's egg of arteries is connected directly to veins with no capillary system and this big old tangled mess that he never even knew he was born with, that all of a sudden that was our life. And after the stroke, Kyler was very, very lucky because I had got him to the hospital in a timely manner, and just because of a lot of things, he bled into his ventricle, which helped and gave us more time. We were very, very blessed in that he did not suffer major deficits. Did we have to go to rehab and all that stuff? Oh, absolutely. Kyler's AVM is on his left side. So that means he has right side weakness and things like that. But at the end of our hospital stay, I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do to get rid of this? And the doctors were like, I'm so sorry. His AVM is too big. We cannot help you. Yeah. And I am not going to take, we cannot help you. That doesn't work for me because my kid has a ticking time bomb in his brain. And so I went from, okay, I sell houses, I'm a realtor, to, okay, I'm a realtor who has Google, and I'm going to read a bunch of medical journals, and I'm going to constantly, Google everything and learn as much as I can.
Yeah. And I think, there's so many folks that have gone through a similar experience, right? Whether it's, a husband seeing their wife have a stroke at 28 years old with a newborn son, or, obviously an older adult going through a stroke. But there's a difference when it's your son and he's 15 years old. And like you said, there's no answer for a time bomb ticking in his head, right?
Right.
Now, as I was kind of doing a bit of research, you have this amazing thread on what's called Care Bridge. And for anyone who's not familiar with Care Bridge, definitely recommend going out. We could share the link to your page with Kyler's story and everything. But you had a really interesting point here that I just want you to kind of speak to, and then we could talk to more of how you've taken this to drive the advocacy and some of the amazing work that you've done, but even tomorrow that you're going to be doing with the state lobby in Texas. But to quote you, your sister said that she's a psychiatrist, and she's called you crazy your whole life, which I thought was kind of funny. Crazy hat lady, maybe, if anybody's watching sees the hat collection. But there's a point where it's a kind of a children's book from what I saw, or from what you were saying. And it reads, what are problems for? They challenge us, shape us, push us, and help us to discover just how strong and brave and capable we really are. Even though we don't always want them, problems have a way of changing us in unexpected ways. What will you do with your problem? Now it's up to you. I found that, and you kind of carry on to talk to the moral of that and what that's done. So I'd love to, from both your perspectives, right? Because it's not just a you problem, Kyler. It's a family problem. But you guys have, fist bump away. Like, you guys have done something amazing. So can you speak to that quote and how that's really proven evidence in terms of what you're doing now with AVM Alliance and for the wider stroke community?
Sure. So Kyler and I talk about that a lot, right? I mean, sometimes you're given cards that you really didn't want, right? You didn't want what you're dealt, and you can't do anything about it. So we have to think about, for example, Kyler's AVM right now is not operable. So we're looking at, and he's been doing alternate treatments to see, what we can do. Now, what happens with those treatments, that's out of our control. That's something that we don't have any control over, right? And I can think about that and think about my kid has a ticking time bomb and, hey, all these other things. And it can just, or, he's having trouble. He can't remember things today, right? He's got epilepsy now. I can just focus and worry about that, and seizures, and oh my gosh, right? And man, if you start going down that hill, it's going to snowball, and it's really, really hard to stop that rotation once it gets started. And so the way that Kyler and I think about it is, okay, we are not going to stress about what we have no control over. Okay, so instead, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on what do we have control over. And that's what we're going to make our focus and our mission. And for Kyler, when he first had his stroke, he was so lonely and scared in the hospital. right? And he's like, I can talk to other kids that find themselves like me. All of a sudden, they're playing outside, and the next thing you know, they're in the hospital, usually like with a tube sticking out of their head, right? Because they have an EVD shunt, right? Trying to help regulate the pressure. And he's like, I can talk to them and I can say, he sends videos all the time that says, now you're going to have an angiogram. This is what it is. Don't worry. Don't be scared. He is somebody that kids that are his age can relate and talk to. And for me, on the parent side, I'm like, gosh, all I wanted when I was in the hospital, all of a sudden overnight, was I wanted to know about stories. I wanted to know about other people who had been there, and what did they do, and what were they told, and what should I look out for? Because all this, I don't know. When anybody has a stroke, ischemic, any kind, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that makes it a lot scarier. And so our focus is like, okay, so on my side, I created AVM Alliance, which is a pediatric brain aneurysm AVM stroke group, to help educate parents and to help get teens and stuff together, and younger kids together, to see that, one, they're not alone, and two, okay, I can have a sounding board. I can have somebody else who's walking down this path with me. And, they always say it takes a village, and I'm going to say especially so if you or someone you love has had a stroke. And so it's just working that community together for the benefit of everybody involved.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. And go ahead, David.
I was just, you had mentioned the work you're doing with the AVM Alliance, and first of all, wonderful mindset with both of you. You can only control what you can control, and you bring back that positivity, and Kyler, to be able to be in a position that you can now turn that energy into helping other young adults your age that are in the beginning of this process, and you can let them know it's okay to breathe, and this is expected. This is what you that lived experience that we talked at the beginning. So to you both, it's just a wonderful job in what you're doing. And I want to make sure we when we first learned of Kyler's story and were introduced to you via the International Alliance for Pediatric Stroke. So Mary, hopefully I want to make sure I get her name right? Mary Kay Balastios. How do I say her name?
I just call her Mary Kay.
Mary Kay. So
she's wonderful.
Can you talk to how you mentioned that you work on one side and she works on the other side in terms of the different types of strokes in peds?
Yes. So Mary Kay is absolutely amazing. We kind of I think she found me online or with Dr. Fraser. So what happened was we go to the stroke clinic, right? The pediatric stroke clinic in our town in Houston, Texas. And the doctors came to us and they said, you're doing such a good job with advocacy and things. We need a place to take we need a place to offer our parents who are given this diagnosis, a place that they can go to help, because they know that it's not like just, okay, diagnosis, treatment, done, right? It becomes a lifelong new life process. There's kind of a line in the sand that's before the stroke and after the stroke. And that line is always there forever and ever. And so what happened was the pediatric stroke clinic contacted me and said, hey, can you put something together for parents? Can you help create some things? And by the way, here's Mary Kay, and she does ischemic stroke. And Mary Kay and I hit it off as if we had known each other, always overnight. And she's wonderful because she's been doing this for over 20 years on the ischemic side because of her child. And I've only been doing this, 2.5 years, right? Because of the hemorrhagic side for my child, but we have the same goals. And there's a great point where, it crosses over, and I can help on the hemorrhagic side, and she can help on the ischemic side, and we can work together to help our pediatric stroke community. And so that's kind of what we're doing.
That's super cool. And, we also, again, with Mary Kay's introduction, kind of opened our eyes to, some of the amazing folks who were highlighted last year with the Stroke Heroes Award through the American Heart Association. And I know Skylar, you're a, I would say maybe what do you think, a B-list, C-list celebrity when you're walking around town now? I mean, you're getting up there.
Can you tell them what you are so they can
The
2022
the 2022, what is it?
pediatric.
Pediatric hero, I think, for the American Heart Association.
That's right.
So and I'd like to kind of, for you to talk through that and, what you did to get yourself that nomination from the advocacy side.
So I didn't do anything.
Well, you didn't.
Well, I didn't. Sorry,
people.
other people nominated me. I had no idea.
But what were you doing?
Pretty much. I mean, I wasn't trying to get an award or anything. I would just send videos, to kids, explaining, like she talked about earlier, about, explaining, what they're going through and stuff like that. How I got through it. I would send them,
Care packages?
blankets, snacks,
Warm socks.
warm socks, just a whole assortment of things.
And
I
then
would,
you did your walks.
their mom would tell me, what they like and stuff, and so we'd use that to, send them something. We've done fundraisers and stuff.
Awareness walks.
Yeah. So you were able to, and I think that's such an important, like, collaborative effort and expertise that you guys bring as well, right? So a big part of pediatric stroke is obviously you now have, Raylene, in your case, yourself. I know Sammy's really trying to get on here. Don't tell him to wait. He's got a few more minutes till he makes his
Sorry.
But I would like, Kyler, for you and, Raylene, from your perspectives, like when we think about education and awareness, right? There's a big gap in terms of how a generation, and I know your mom's hip, Kyler, but it's an old, like, TikTok and all these new ways that, kids are and, younger generation are consuming content is much different than how a parent might want to sit down and understand, read, digest things and fully kind of grasp that relevance of what's happened, right?
Right.
So from your eyes, and again, you didn't like do this out of all your content, you weren't seeking an award, but it got you, the recognition you absolutely deserved for that. But my question is, as you continue this effort through advocacy, more kids need to know about what these risks are. Not only for your type of stroke, but stroke at a young age in general, right? So how do you so how do you see that? Like, how do you think kids, like, we could do a better job at educating the younger generation on these symptoms or these risk factors?
Younger kids don't even, I mean, I didn't even know when I was 15 about, strokes and stuff like that. Never crossed my mind. I thought only elderly would get a stroke, because I'd hear, oh, your grandpa had a stroke. I would never hear, oh, your cousin had a stroke, or someone else's cousin having a stroke, or brother. I had no idea that was possible for a kid to have a stroke. I'd only hear about, cancer,
and things like that.
So
he made a TikTok. So Kyler made a TikTok just to hit the the younger generation. And his TikTok right now has over 130,000 views. So he's hitting the things. Kyler has a little bit of aphasia, so spontaneous speech is sometimes a tad difficult. But what we try to promote is that stroke has no age limit. Like that's our biggest thing.
I think it's gonna be flipped.
No, it'll show correctly.
Yeah, let's talk through that, because for those folks that are, maybe we'll head over to the video and some of the resources. I want you to talk a little bit more. Raylene put up a picture of the logo and the characters that are part of your initiative and your advocacy. I was fascinated by the characters and the meaning behind them. Can you talk to those a little bit?
Sure. So we could not find a really good solid symbol to represent pediatric stroke and what kids were going through. And we really wanted to create something that allowed help with pediatric stroke awareness that kids would find entertaining or be able to relate to, that really conveyed the meanings that were important to us about pediatric stroke. So we have 3 characters. The first character is RDV. So RDV is for arteriovenous malformation, which is, a brain AVM. And RDV is wearing a maroon ribbon because the awareness ribbon for brain AVM is maroon. And he is a green butterfly pig. And the reason why we chose that is that a green butterfly is the symbol of a brain bleed survivor. So RDV is our magical pig butterfly who's got a lot of green in his outfit. And then we have Annie. And Annie is our aneurysm awareness fox, our little magical fox. And she has a red ribbon on her hair that she wears for aneurysm awareness. And then our last little guy here is Dash. And when you think about having a stroke, everybody thinks about be fast, right? The symbol for balance, eyes, right, face, that whole thing for what people to think about when you think about stroke. And the ribbon for a pediatric stroke is maroon, sorry, is blue. Yes, I know. Is blue and purple. So blue and purple is the symbol for pediatric stroke. And so we created Dash as our magical bunny, because you think of like the tortoise and the hare and being fast. And so we always say, well, Dash says, be fast, and everybody works together, aneurysm, AVM, stroke, to remind our community that stroke has no age limit.
Perfect. So what I think we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we're going to put all those resources in. And when we come back, Sammy has been waiting patiently to join us on the show. So I think what we'll do is we'll be right back after this short break. All right. And we're back, and we're joined now by a third guest. We have Sammy. So this is definitely you're gonna have to go to the YouTube on this one for sure. Tell us about your our guest here, Sammy.
So Sammy is my service dog. He takes care of me. He is a seizure and diabetic alert dog. So he lets me know if I'm about to have a seizure. I'm not a diabetic, but his last owner was a diabetic. But unfortunately, she passed away from a heart attack. So it kind of ended up with me getting Sam. I was very lucky to have Sam. And we just created a really big bond. Now he is a complete baby if I'm not there. So I'm like his service person.
That's right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so normally you have to wait a couple years for a service dog, when you fill out an application, and everything happens for a reason. And Sam had been placed with his diabetic alert person, and they had only been placed a week when the person unfortunately suffered a heart attack, and the estate returned Sammy so that he could find someone else that would really need him. It was important to the estate that Sammy find somebody. And so we called and said, hey, we have some issues, we have some needs, and how do we start the process? And they were walking us through, and they said, you know what, it just so happens that we have a dog. And this is like, we never have a dog, but we have a dog. And so we put the two together, and it was crazy. It was like, they were always meant to be. These guys are best buds. They are thick as thieves. So whenever Kyler has to have his chemotherapy or any treatments, or is in the hospital, wherever Kyler goes, Sammy goes with him.
That's beautiful. And like you said, right, things happen for a reason, and Sammy's been able to fall in your lives. So speak more, there's a lot of folks that are interested in dog services. I know we could direct folks. I believe you, Raylene, you were saying on your podcast you have an episode dedicated to service animals. Is it
Yes.
specifically, kind of on how they've worked with stroke survivors in this case, or just a generic?
It's just in general, but we
Yeah.
do talk a lot about what service animals can do to help people in the stroke community. My podcast is called AVM Alliance Podcast. It's not near as fancy and nice as this one, but we do have a great interview from the dog trainer, the person who actually trained Sammy, who's been doing it for 30 plus years. And he basically, whatever you need as somebody who has a need, you sit down and you talk to the trainer and say, okay, these are the problems that I have. Like, after my stroke, I have field vision loss. Is there somebody who could help me make sure I don't run into walls, or I need help with my balance? Or for Kyler, he needs help knowing before he has a seizure for safety. And then also we have Sammy set up now so that sometimes Kyler gets something that's called like an aclonic seizure. And with an aclonic seizure, he's aware for about 30 to 45 seconds, but he is paralyzed completely on one side. And so Kyler can say a word and Sammy will go. Sammy knows when you say that word, Sammy knows exactly where to go. And he will pull the alarm, and then that will immediately trigger help. So it gives Kyler the independence that he needs as well.
And you have a video on your Facebook page of Sammy in training there as well.
Yes, I have a video on Facebook that you can look at. I think I have it also on the Caring Bridge site. So, and you can go to the YouTube. I've got all kinds of videos on the YouTube page that Kyler has, and you can keep that one if somebody wants to say, hey, this might be something that might work for my family member. It's not, it didn't take a whole long to train him, but it's, you have to get the image. You have to explain to the dog what they want. And it is a little bit of a process there. But in terms of the alarm that we use, it's a simple enough thing as like a window alarm. Right. So you have a window, and when you raise the window, the alarm goes dee, 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 right? So it's the same thing. It's just separating one piece of an alarm, a magnetic alarm, from the other. And then that calls help.
Well, I'm so happy Sammy was able to make an appearance here. Again, you guys are attached at the hip. So I mean, obviously he was going to be here, but he's, I'm really happy to see you guys have this support, and, we'll have to bring him back on, as he's gaining his skills and becoming, even more attached, we'll have another chat. But, I think, we'd love to kind of move now into, our what we term as our magic wand question, which we usually wrap up every interview with. And it's your time to be as creative as your mind could go, right? We've often, asked folks, and, it's a magic pill that no one will ever have a stroke, right? But given that this is something that, a magic pill won't be able to probably cure, and it hasn't been able, like, it didn't work in your circumstance, right? Like, how would you take this magic wand with the opportunity, like the situations you're in right now, what you've been able to learn, both Kyler and Raylene yourselves, Kyler, maybe let's start with you. And I'd love to hear, how would you take, the magic wand and make sure that every single child going through the school system had an opportunity to know the symptoms of stroke, to know what the impacts could be?
Yeah.
How would that look in your world?
I don't know. I know that in school, like biology and different anatomy and stuff like that, we are always taught about, cancer and stuff like that, and how it works. I think it'd be great if the school system included, sorry, I have hair in my face. If the school system would incorporate, AVMs and strokes, because they doesn't really do that. I mean, I had no idea. Maybe parents, most parents don't know what it is. Maybe if parents were informed, or they would do maybe an MRI at birth or something like that. If they did that, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be a thing that you just find out about, you'd kind of already know. But I think that's something I would do if I had a magic wand.
I love that response.
Perfect.
Well said. And Raylene, let's kind of pass it to you now. How it, from your experience and as a mom,
So,
what would you
so
like to say?
today is February 28th, right? And so that's Rare Disease Day. In case you didn't know, February 28th is Rare Disease Day. And I think that, and for a lot of situations in which you have a stroke, at least for hemorrhagic brain AVM, it's considered a rare disease. They say, and what the community doesn't, they're like, oh, I don't have to worry about it. Like, that's one less thing I have to worry about because it's rare.
What happens to you?
Right. And so, like the Aneurysm and AVM Foundation say, well, it's only rare until it happens to you. Right. AVM Alliance takes it a little bit a different way. And this is what I want parents, if I had my little magic wand, for everybody to understand. Okay. The number one cause of a brain bleed in a child, excluding trauma, right? They fall, they hit their head, they cause trauma. There's trauma that's caused. Car wreck. The number one cause of a brain AVM, the number one cause of a brain bleed in a child, excluding trauma, is a brain AVM. I mean, that's like the number one cause of a hemorrhagic stroke. And I really would like for the community to know that, and like Kyler, know the symptoms, because you can really help somebody at all ages. People hear about heat stroke, right? Occasionally people hear about, they think, well, stroke is based on lifestyle, right? You can do things to be more healthy. And that's absolutely true, but people don't understand that that's not every situation.
That's an ischemic stroke normally.
Sometimes.
More than AV.
No, I think
For
it's
eating?
Well, yeah, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And that's the stigma, that's a stigma of stroke, right? It's, you did it to yourself.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what needs to change. And, to what this episode is going to be titled, stroke can happen at any age, right? So I think that's been, two really well said, responses. And, you guys are doing so much to get the voice out there. So, from, David and I, this is our first time, speaking, really learning about this. So thank you for sharing, and teaching us so much today. And I'm sure it's going to be a great opportunity for our listeners to learn more and hopefully connect in. And, whether it's, providers, caregivers, like there's so much we can learn from each other. Right. So thank you for the work you're doing. And I know you have a busy day tomorrow. So do you want to leave on and share some of the work that you're going to be doing tomorrow?
Sure. So we are advocating for the American Heart Association tomorrow in Austin. It's going to be Advocacy Day. So we live a couple hours away. So we're going to get up early and take Sammy for a road trip. And we're going to drive down to Austin, Texas, and try to get some lawmakers at hand and try to meet some important people at the Capitol to that we can do some advocacy for the AHA about pediatric stroke, about stroke in general, and then of course always about the importance of heart health.
Really well, if there's one person for the job to sit in that lobby, I mean, it's the two of you to be able to be there and make your voices heard and represent the wider community. So thank you for doing that. And you know what, it's as we see the wider stroke community and there's more attention around this, as you look at some folks who are in Congress. You have John Fetterman, Ben Ray Lujan, who was speaking at the International Stroke Conference. So there's attention on it, but what it takes is that community like ourselves of lived experience who really speak from the patient and the caregiver perspective, and trying to come as one, right? Because it's not these individual groups that are going to solve the issues when we all come together as one and really try to drive that needle. So it's amazing, what you're doing, and thank you for doing your part. And, hopefully the ears will be there to hear and kind of drive some of this forward. But, it's been a great,
our best to try to get them thinking.
Yeah, that's, what it's, consistency, right? We gotta keep with it. And obviously you have your passion, and Kyler, you know, you're going to be an amazing patient advocate for the rest of your life and share your story. So many more awards to come, young man, even though you don't ask for them. All right.
Thank you.
Well, yeah,
Stroke
we'll
has-
let you go.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again for your time, and well wishes to
Thank you.
Sammy.
Thank you for helping us with our cause, and thank you for all that you do for the stroke community.
And having us on. Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was fun. It was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.